Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you, choir. That was absolutely beautiful. I want to begin with a statement. One of the things that I think our society is really longing for, really hungry for, is bravery. I believe that many people in our society are hungry for the virtue of bravery. And the reason why I say that is I want to explain a little bit about my background from my spiritual background. I was baptized in the Assyrian Church of the East. I grew up going to the Catholic Church just a couple doors down. And then I ended up going to a non-denominational church a few doors down. Then I spent 4 years at a non-denominational seminary in Dallas, Texas. And then I spent 4 years as a youth pastor in a Presbyterian church in Texas. And of course, I've been with you all for the last 9 months. And throughout the years, I've experienced many different Jesuses. Here's what I mean. For example, there was the somber, warm, loving Catholic Jesus. And then there's the charismatic, in-your-face Jesus. And then there's if you were to die tonight and God were to ask you if He's going to let you into His heaven, what would you say to Him? Evangelical Jesus. And then there's the strict, what's going on in your life and where are some areas of sin that we need to talk about, Jesus. And then there's the Jesus is my best friend, Jesus. Throughout the years, I've met quite a few different Jesuses. And what's interesting is that within all these different communities, within all these different traditions, there's rules for what's right and what's wrong. Right? So if you were to go to one church or hang out with one group of Christians, they would have a set of standards for proper conduct or behavior in that group. And then you go hang out with another one, and for example, there's one set of Christians, a group of Christians I used to hang out with, where it was all about sin. We'd get together and we'd talk about what is sin, what isn't sin, where are the areas of our life where we've sinned. These guys would make lists of this is a sin, this isn't a sin. Dallas Willard, the philosopher out of USC, or former philosopher, he passed away recently, philosophy teacher at USC, he said that for many people, Christianity is simply sin management. Christianity is sort of just a way to manage your sins. Would you agree with me that there are many in our society, in our Christian culture, who their main focus is, let's just get together and talk about what's right and what's wrong, and who's right and who's wrong. Then you have another set of Christians where it's not about, let's not spend all of our time talking about sin, let's talk about God's redemptive love. Let's talk about how God has forgiven you and He wants you to lead a life that makes a big difference. And you have purpose. So everybody went in on a purpose-driven life. Simple point I'm trying as I begin to make is that lots of different movements within Christendom. And I would love to say to you that, you know what, I've been a Presbyterian for the past 5 years, and the Presbyterian Jesus I've grown close to and I'm completely familiar with. But the problem is that the Jesus I know continues to challenge me in my understanding of who He is, who God is, and what we're here to do. In other words, my beliefs about God are not static. God, of course, there's some basics that we all hold on to. The Trinity, we're saved by grace through faith. Jesus died and was raised from the dead, and He will return again. There's some basics that you come back to again and again and again. But throughout the years, I've noticed that in other ways, God is simply changing who I am and how I understand Him. And it can be very, very painful. Because sometimes you have one awareness of who God is, and then you have a new awareness and you realize there's a whole community of people, could be even people in your own family or friends, that aren't moving with you. And it's very difficult to then make that choice. Do I move? Do I take on this new awareness that Christ has made me aware of who He is? Or do I stay here? And it can be very painful. And so when I said earlier that one of the things I think our society needs, I think especially within Christendom, what we need is bravery. People who will say, God is making me aware of something that I wasn't aware of before. And I need to embrace that. You see, it's easy to settle for comfort. I know for me, in my own life, I've experienced great pain and loss of relationships because of my new awareness of who Christ is. See, for some people, when I became a Presbyterian, that actually wasn't a good thing, believe it or not. So what I want to do in our time together is we're going to look at some followers of God, and we're going to make some comparisons, because it's important for us as we follow God to be able to be brave and to be able to know what God thinks of us, even if we struggle, even if we aren't always putting our best foot forward. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to, you all know who King David is in the Old Testament. King David is one person in our time referred to him as the Elvis Presley of the Bible. He's a singer, he's a dancer, he writes poems, he's a warrior, he's just awesome. Well, David had his followers. He had his mighty men, his companions. So David is sort of one of the kings in the Bible. But there's another king, right? Jesus, the Christ, or Jesus, the King. And Jesus had his followers. So we're going to do a comparison. But one of the things we're going to do is we're going to put a little twist on it. Now, I was at my cousin's house yesterday, and a song came on the radio, Buttercup. Do you guys know that song, Buttercup? Build me a buttercup. Yeah. Every time that song comes on, we think of Family Funworks, because we both used to work there, and it was on the jukebox. We always played it. So songs remind us of like places, events. There's certain songs, as soon as they come on, you think back to maybe a time with a loved one, or maybe a family celebration. So I want to play some theme songs, and if you can guess the theme song, you get a Kit Kat, and it's a perfect thing to eat right before lunch. So I'm not you'll have to see me after the service to collect your Kit Kat, because last service I threw them at people and someone's in the hospital. No, I'm kidding. All right, so let's have some fun. When you hear this theme song, just go ahead and shout it out. First I have to turn my clicker on. You guys remember Price is Right, the horn? Dun, 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 dun. That would be like what would come on when your PowerPoint doesn't work correctly for you. Craig, is the audio on for...
Should be. Yeah, everything's on.
Okay, next one. Sorry about that. I didn't mean it to be that loud. This one might be a little bit harder, but... There we go, Joey. Got it. Super Mario Brothers. I was a little nervous because first congregation, or first service, I was like, is anybody going to get this? It's too early in the morning. Okay, last one. when we hear these theme songs, they instantly take us to a certain place. They either take us back to childhood. They take us back to childhood. My audio did not work as well as I would like if you guys had noticed. But the good news is you heard the theme songs, and most of you were able to instantly recognize them. So here's the question I want to raise right now. If God chose a theme song for his followers, what theme song would he choose?
On eagle's wings.
All right. You know, actually, the hymns we sing, the songs we sing on Sundays are really sort of the theme songs for Christians. But what I want to do is I want to read to you out of 2 Samuel, where King David describes, or there's a description of King David's followers, and I've chosen some music that I think fits. So here it is. 2 Samuel 23:8. Josheb, Bashebeth, the Tachmonite. He was the chief of the three. He wielded his spear against 800 whom he killed at one time. Eleazar, the son of Dodo, son of Ahonihai. He was with David when they defied the Philistines who gathered there for battle. And the men of Israel withdrew. He rose and he struck down the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clung to the sword. And the Lord brought about great victory that day. And the men returned after him only to strip the slain. Shema, the son of Agi, the Hararite. The Philistines gathered together at Lehi, where there was a plot of ground full of lentils, a Gideon's dream. And the men fled from the Philistines, but he took his stand in the midst of the plot, and he defended it, and struck down the Philistines, and the Lord worked a great victory. One time, David had a craving, and he said, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem, which is by the gate." So the three mighty men, David's followers, broke through the camp of the Philistines, and they drew water from the well of Bethlehem, which was by the gate, and they took it, and they brought it to David. And when David got it, he said, nevertheless, he would not drink it, but he poured it out for the Lord. He said, "Be it far from me, O Lord, that I should use it. Shall I drink the blood of the men? Should I drink the blood of the men who went in jeopardy of their lives?" Therefore, he did not drink it. These things the mighty men did. Sometimes you have to add some music when you're reading these passages in the scripture so you can really get the feel. These guys were amazing, valiant, powerful men who did extraordinary things. They were a part of David's crew. He sent them on these missions where their lives were at stake, and they had high value, bravery. And here's another scene that shows just how important these men were. In 1 Samuel 21, verses 1 through 6, it says, David went to Ahimelech, the priest in Nob. Ahimelech was shaking with fear when he met David. And he said to him, "Why are you by yourself, with no one accompanying you?" David replied to Ahimelech, the priest, "The king instructed me to do something, but he said to me, 'Don't let anyone know the reason I am sending you or the instructions I have given you. I have told my soldiers to wait at a certain place. Now, what do you have at your disposal? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever can be found." The priest replied to David, "I don't have any ordinary bread at my disposal. Only bread is available. Only holy bread is available, and then only if your soldiers have abstained from sexual relations with women." David said to the priest, "Certainly women have been kept away from us, just as on previous occasions when I have set out. The soldiers' equipment is holy, even on an ordinary journey. How much more so will they be holy today, along with their equipment?" So the priest gave him holy bread, for there was no bread there other than the bread of the presence. It had been removed from before the Lord in order to replace it with hot bread on the day it had been taken away. So this was a big thing that they were given this holy bread to eat. It wasn't supposed to be given to David and his men, but the situation required it. These men were brave. They had high value in their society. They were willing to take risks. They were willing to fight battles that other men weren't willing to risk their lives. They were valiant. And when it comes to being a Christian, I think it also requires a similar level of strength and courage. But yet, when we look at Jesus' disciples, see, we just read the descriptions for David and his 3 mighty men, and they are strong and powerful. But what's funny or interesting is that when you read some of the descriptions of the disciples, Jesus' followers, they aren't as impressive. So let's go through 3 separate occasions. The first one, Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 56, says this: As the time drew near for him to ascend to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. He sent messengers ahead to a Samaritan village to prepare for his arrival. But the people of the village did not welcome Jesus because he was on his way to Jerusalem. When James and John, Jesus' followers, saw this, they said to Jesus, Lord, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up? But Jesus turned and rebuked them. So they went to another village. I mean, who says that? Who would say, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up? Isn't that completely irrational? Arrogant? I would not want my name to be, then Steve said, should we call down fire from heaven to burn them up? It's not necessary, it's not valiant. It's like, come on guys, you couldn't think of another solution? Let's look at another passage. Matthew chapter 4, or Mark chapter 4, verses 37 through 41. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping on the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples woke him up, shouting, Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown? When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, Silence, be still. Suddenly, the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? The disciples were absolutely terrified. Who is this man? They asked each other. Even the wind and the waves obey him. So here in this passage, Jesus' disciples are viewed as people who are filled with fear. What we saw with David's followers, his mighty men, that they were valiant, they were brave. Jesus' disciples filled with fear. I think if we're being honest, all of us can say there are times, there are days, there are moments, there are weeks, sometimes even months, where we are filled with fear for one reason or another. Let's look at another descriptor of Jesus' followers. Luke chapter 5, verses 4 through 8. And for those of you who have heard me speak, I will go back to this passage again and again. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, Put out into deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered Jesus and he said, Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and let down the nets. So he lets down the nets. When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish, and their nets began to break, so that they signaled to their partners in the other boat for them to come and help them. And when they came, they filled both boats so high that they began to sink. But Simon Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, said, he fell down at his feet and he said, Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. When you look at the descriptors for David and his mighty men, valiant, strong, they did these amazing things. When you read the New Testament Gospels and you start reading about Jesus' disciples, arrogant, filled with fear, sinful. Now don't get me wrong, of course, there's very redeeming qualities as well. But the simple point that I'm trying to make here is that when you are following Christ, there are times when you are filled with fear, arrogant, and sinful. And it's during those times where you might be down on yourself. where you might feel like giving up, where you may have said, you know what, I've got this community of people I was close to and I've got to make some changes. Or I've got to have this difficult conversation with my son or daughter or grandchild. And it isn't easy and it's painful. And there are times where you might be lacking bravery. And it's important during those times that you remember how Jesus sees you. Because even though Jesus' disciples failed him on many different occasions, guess who chose them to be his followers? Jesus did, right? Jesus chose his disciples, knowing all about them, knowing all about their struggles, their hang-ups, the areas of their life that they aren't proud of, the areas of their life where they need to improve or grow or let God's love infiltrate. And so it's important that even when we struggle, even when we have those times when we don't do as well as we'd like, to remember what God thinks of us. And so you might say, well, it doesn't look like God thinks very highly of us, looking at those passages of the way that the disciples acted. But I want to take you to a passage in Matthew chapter 12 that I think reveals how Jesus felt about his disciples. Matthew chapter 12, verses 1 through 4 says this. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat. This was something you weren't supposed to do. But when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, look, your disciples do what is not lawful to do on a Sabbath. But he said to them, have you not read what David did when he became hungry, he and his companions were mighty men? How he entered the house of God, and they ate the consecrated bread which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those with him, but for the priests alone. If you're standing in that room, and you're one of Jesus' followers, and you know you're filled with fear, you've got struggles and issues, and you're following this guy Jesus, and he's being confronted by the Pharisees, by his major opponents of his life. He's being confronted by them. And in his response to their allegation, his response is, haven't you read what David and his mighty men did? Who is he likening himself and his disciples to? He's likening himself to David and his disciples to David's mighty men. So if you're in that room and you're watching this confrontation go down and you hear Jesus say that, do you possibly start thinking, Jesus views you as he has an incredible faith in you. See, in our society, it's all about, do you believe in God? But you know what? God believes in you. Jesus believes in you. He chose you, and despite your hang-ups, he views you as powerful. And so I don't know what all you came in here with this morning. I don't know what issues you might be wrestling with or what struggles you might feel like they're getting the best of me. Well, I just want you to know that Jesus believes in you to overcome your struggles, to move on to the next stage of awareness of his love that can see you through whatever issue you're dealing with. And despite your hang-ups, your sins, your times where you're filled with fear, Jesus believes in you. He believed in his disciples, his first followers, which, by the way, there was men and there was women. And there was people from all walks of life who followed Jesus. So if you're here this morning, I I just want you to be empowered and know no matter what you've got going on in your life, don't give up, because God believes in you to be all that He created you to be.